Wonderful greetings to all of you, my dearly beloved brothers and sisters, sons and daughters. I trust all of you are well and good. Well, we are going to study about another wonderful experience in the spiritual realm. Remember, this entire series is about spiritual experiences, and you need to learn them because in the last days remnant are going to walk in it. All the spiritual experiences that you read, the patriarchs, the prophets, and the apostles experience in the Bible, they are readily available for you. And we need to learn how to walk in them, experience them, first in your own personal life, and then you can impart them to others. This will become very, very prevalent in the last days. Remember, during the Antichrist regime, the woman Israel will be in the wilderness for 3.5 years. And the remnant will be on the run for 3.5 years. So during that period of time, when the eyes of the all-seeing eyes of the Antichrist regime is watching everywhere in all direction, and just like Ahab's armies that were hunting for Elijah will be hunting for the remnant, and we need to walk in this supernatural realm to survive that period of 3.5 years. So that is why we've designed this program to create an awareness, to teach the last days remnant about these experiences. So, my dear brothers, shall we continue? Today we
Let's
are
do
going to
it.
talk about translations and translocations. Now, how can we define a translation? So, how will you pronounce the Greek word?
Metatethemi.
Metatethemi means to transfer, that is to transport, exchange, or change sites. So I looked up some scientific definitions. I'm a sci-fi person, right?
Yes, yeah.
I grew up watching Star Trek. They say, "Beam me up, Scotty," and then all the molecules, the human body, they are broken up to millions of little molecules, and then they are transported to another location where they all put back together,
Reconstituted.
right? So, is the transfer of matter or energy from one point to another without traversing the physical space between them. So, or simply put, this is scientific definition, all
simply
right?
put, yeah.
Scientific. Then later on, I'm going to ask you for spiritual definition because I think the remnant believers who follow our ministries, they've been largely benefited by your teachings on the translation by faith. And God has specially blessed you and called you to be a pioneer in this area. So we want to um, ask you a lot of questions about this. So simply put, it means to transport a material object, maybe like this cup, to a new location. Now you cannot just simply send this cup, right? You need to decompose the matter, all its molecular structure into atomic elements that it can even be seen by the natural eyes, then transmit them through like how uh, light and sound video is converted into electrical signals and sent through a fiber in terms of light. It always amazes me, how even in this present time, science and technology does that. Even a wireless transmission. Like when I'm sitting at my office and doing work, when I want to print a letter, when I've done on my page, and then when I press print, it is wirelessly sent to the printer. How it does, it always fascinates me. Where does all those letter that disappear? And then when it appears on the printer, it neatly types out. Right? So it's a transport of a material object from one location to another nuclear location by decomposing its molecular structure into atomic elements and then transmitting those elements through the cosmos and rebuilding them in the new venue. I think the Star Trek movies made it so popular. Don't you agree?
Oh, yeah, that's where people became aware of
Okay,
this.
that is what science say
Right.
with all their limited understanding. So now let's look at it from the spiritual point of view. So how would you explain this, Dr. Bruce?
What's interesting, the Lord showed me from both the physics that He created
Mm-hmm.
and the supernatural where we were birthed.
Mm.
So basically, making it really simple, it's stepping out of one dimension into the third heaven and coming out in a different location
And all that takes place in the twinkling of an eye.
instantly.
Right.
And He doesn't have to break our molecular structure down to finite things. Yeah.
So I've got it written in my notes to be transported from the earthly realm to the heavenly realm.
Right.
Right?
Instantly.
Or to be transported from one time dimension to another, either to the past or to the future.
Yes.
Agreed?
Yes.
And all this amazingly takes place just in an instant.
Instantaneously.
That's something I think no scientist or laws of physics can explain. How this takes place in an instant.
Well, the construct of physics, this is the way the Lord explained it to me. When God said, light be, He created physics to house a natural dimension. And so that's the ruling construct of this natural realm, the universe and everything. But He's above that. So and then He gave us authority over this construct, all the works of His hands. When we become created in His image, so He's the creator, so we have an authority that most Christians never even begin to comprehend. So it's fascinating to me that what's been given and what we walk in. So the natural realm, they can't conceive of anything beyond the construct because then it gets a little bit too mystical or they don't want to get anywhere near faith. So they have to keep it within that realm.
Some time ago in the year 1994, I was called by the Lord to fast for 3 days. And during the period of time, I was, I'm always fascinated by astronomy from a young age, So I was reading a book written by the great British physicist Stephen Hawking on a brief history of time. Have you read it?
No, I haven't.
You heard about it?
Yes, I have.
A brief history of time where they trace about how time began, the cosmos began and all that, And I was lying on my bed. And on this 3-day fast, on the third day, I had a visitation from the Lord Jesus. And He came and sat on the bed and He said, I'm going to teach you secrets of the universe. And then He looked over, took that book in His hand. He said, let's go through this book page by page.
Wow.
We went through page by page where He showed me where the scientists are right and where they are wrong. The explanation of the laws of physics and all that. Then He explained about one of the theories that was my favorite, Einstein's theory of relativity.
Yeah.
So E equal mc square. He said, Einstein was right and he was wrong. He was right because that formula explains the spiritual realm. But he was wrong because you cannot transport from one dimension to another dimension in the physical, like how it is explained today. Decomposing of the body elements, he said it will never work in the physical. So this transportation from one realm to another realm, like you explained, takes place at the twinkling of an eye. And we read in Revelation chapter 4 that when the Lord called John, come up, it was an instantaneous transfer from the earthly realm to the heavenly realm. Am I right?
Yeah, very much.
So that's translation.
But let me say this
please.
about come up. That's where everybody gets the context that heaven's up there. But what he's really talking about is a higher dimension of reality, not a distant up. It's just a superior dimension, the real realm.
So it can even be just beside you.
It is beside us. Yeah.
Just stepping over from this realm to another realm.
Hey, it's all around us right now.
Right. So that's translation. Now let's talk about the other concept, translocation. So the translocation can be explained by to be transported from one geographical destination to another.
Right.
Agreed?
Yes.
So we have these two concepts, a translation and a translocation. So translation will be more from one spiritual realm to another, one earthly realm to another spiritual realm.
That and or if God just catches you away in the spirit to a different place on the
Right.
earth.
So that always takes place in the spirit.
Well, yeah,
Or
but
in
they
the
can
soul.
actually see you
Right.
and touch you. It's like you're there. But yeah, so when we first started teaching this, that's how God helped me. Translation, that's the biblical narrative. Translocation, to help people understand, that's a physical, geographic.
Right. So we need to lay that
Yeah.
definition straight so that
Right.
our viewers can better understand
Yes.
to practice them. So let's look at a few biblical examples for translocation and translation. So the first example that we're going to look is a bodily translocation. And the most famous example is Philip, which we read in Acts chapter 8, verses 38 to 40, that after he had ministered to the Ethiopian eunuch, when they came up out of the water, the Spirit of the Lord snatched Philip away, and the eunuch no longer saw him, but went on his way rejoicing. But Philip found himself at Azotus, and as he passed through, he kept preaching the gospel to all the cities until he came to Caesarea. And I made a little calculation. I found that from the desert where Philip was to Azotus was a distance of 28 miles.
Wow.
So he was transported in an instance a distance of 28 miles. So have you have any experience like this where you're physically transported?
Yes.
Please share.
Oh, okay. Yeah, translocated now. Driving in a car from Seattle to Spokane is usually 5.5 to 6 hours, depending on the traffic, if you're by the water. And so we prayed to begin to engage.
When was this?
Oh, that was 20 years ago, asking the Lord for a lesson in this as he
So
was
you were
beginning.
not the only one in the car.
No, I had my friend with me.
Okay.
And he knew what God had been teaching me. So we put hands on the dashboard and prayed, Lord, give us our first lesson. We started the drive and we drove from Seattle to Spokane. We stopped in a town called Ellensburg, which is halfway. We had lunch, filled up with gas, took a whole hour off. I remember that because I've done that trip so many times.
So your actual journey would be 6 hours?
5.5 to 6 hours,
Okay,
unless you're speeding, then you can do it 4.5
Okay,
to
let's
5.
do 6 hours, okay?
Okay,
And then plus 1 hour for lunch.
right.
So total time duration should be 7 hours.
Well, no, 6 included the hour off.
Okay, so 6 hours.
Yeah.
Including lunch?
Yes.
Okay, so what should be 6 hours? So what happened then?
Well, when we finally got to our destination and got out of the car and looked at our watch, less than 90 minutes had passed.
Oh.
And I was shocked and I said, Lord, what is this? I'm asking for an example, a lesson in translocation. And what is this?
Now, I remember reading in your book, you quoted this incident, and you said that you remember driving through all the towns,
Yes.
all the stops along the journey, nothing was missing,
No, through the mountains.
and
yeah.
yet that time was shaved.
Yes. So I said, Lord, what is this? And I guess I'll use this example.
Okay.
In school, you learn the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. So that's what this edge of the paper is. And then he said this, unless you're God. I said, Lord, what is that? He said, actually, he didn't answer. He said, actually, the shortest distance is already being there. And then I thought, oh, but boy, now I got to study physics. Well, really what that's called is a wormhole. God shortened the distance, and you went through a physics experiment, I guess I'll put it that way, with a wormhole to shorten the distance.
But it's still baffling because when you pass through a wormhole, at least hypothetically, you are entering into one dimension and then you come out in another dimension. So in between, you don't see anything else,
Unless you're God.
right?
Yeah.
But in your case,
Yeah, I remember
you
everything.
saw everything.
Yeah, yeah.
So it may appear like time stopped,
It was compressed.
compressed,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Time was compressed, but you had no sensation of anything else. You're going through all the motion
Yeah,
except for the time factor,
yeah, exactly.
right?
Really confused us.
Hmm.
You know, you find out God can do anything He wants. He's the designer.
Exactly. Michael, do you have anything of this nature?
Yeah, I have experienced that also. I spent the night in worship. I hadn't intended to, but you know, sometimes it just takes you over. And I spent the whole night in worship, and I felt so exhilarated and alive and excited for having worshiped. And so I got up and I was walking around the house, and I realized I had to get ready for work. And so I thought I'll just step outside for a moment and get a nice deep breath of the morning air before I start my day. And so as I stepped outside, when I stepped outside, I physically found myself standing in front of a church in another part of the country where there was meetings going on.
So this is not in the spirit.
Well,
it's in the
I was,
natural.
This was in the natural because, and I believe that because I was up walking around the house doing things. It's like my body was not left behind at that point. So,
So,
I
From your house to this place that where you were, what's the
yes.
distance?
Well, I would have to guess because I don't know the exact place because the Lord wouldn't allow me
Oh,
to know
okay.
it.
You don't know.
So
All right.
I would guess and say maybe 6 hours. Something
Okay.
like
6 hours by driving.
that. No, 6.
Walking?
No,
Then what?
I meant by time zone.
Okay.
Yeah, so probably maybe 2,000 miles.
Wow. That is amazing. About 2,000 miles.
Something like that, yes.
Okay. Ah, wow.
He had another experience that I don't think he realizes, but it defines translation and translocation. One night he was praying in his prayer chair and was tired, so he thought he'd get up and walk around. And he does that in his house. He goes throughout the whole house, up and down, applying the blood and doing this. When he came back to his chair, his body was there.
Okay.
So he had a translation experience. And there's his body that hadn't left.
But that's not a translocation.
Well,
That's a translation.
it fits in with the translocation. So he was given the graphic example of the difference, and it was so real to you that you didn't know your body was still sitting.
Yes, I couldn't tell that it was not
I
physical.
think another amazing example we find is in John chapter 6, verses 19 to 21, where it says, Then when they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus walking on the sea, drawing near to the boat, and they were frightened. So from the shore, the disciples were about 4 miles away in the middle of the Galilee Sea. And they saw the Lord Jesus walking on the water. And verse 21 says, So they were willing to receive him into the boat, and immediately the boat was at the land to which they were going.
Right.
As soon as the Lord Jesus stepped into the boat, so the disciples plus the Lord Jesus, 13, plus the boat, were translocated
Very much.
in one instant.
I love that.
I call that one Jesus in mass transit. So we don't have to be limited.
You know, speaking of that, I remember Bobby Connor share an example, something similar to your experience of driving from one location to another location, and they were immediately transported. And before he knew, he was driving up the driveway into his house. And his wife, because he called her and told her that he was at the airport and was coming home,
Right.
It was going to be several hours length. And in just 5 minutes, he drove up to their driveway. And when his wife opened the door, she said, "You were lying when you called me from the airport, weren't you?" He said, "No, I wasn't lying." She said, "How can you have just come in 5 minutes?" The whole car was transported.
Yeah. I've had many people tell me the testimonies. They wouldn't share it before I was able to teach some of this because they were afraid they were going to be ostracized.
Please share.
Germany. After we taught just 30 minutes, 45 minutes on this guy came out after the service, said, "Thank God now I can share this." I said, "What?" It was about 2 years earlier. There was a conference in another city 3 hours away. He really wanted to go all week. He was battling back and forth. Should I go? Shouldn't? So he came home, and it starts at 6 o'clock. He got home at 5:55. He went into the house and he told his wife, I have got to go. I don't know why. She said, "Why are you even bothering? By the time you get there, it's going to be over." He said, "I don't know. I've got to go." She said, "Fine, go ahead, waste your time." He got in the car at 5:58, 5:59. So he talked to her for about 2 minutes. He calls her back, says, "I'm here." She said, "Oh, that's not even funny. You're lying." "Well, you know, so-and-so was going too." "Yeah, we know. He's been there all day." He said, he put him on. He said, "Yeah, he's here."
So what was the distance?
Well, it was 3 hours away. So I
3
don't know the
hours.
distance, but I mean, he did it in less than a minute. And they never told a soul because they thought,
Weird.
yeah. So, and we've had numbers of testimonies.
Did he
like
drive?
this. Yeah, he drove.
He drove.
He got in the car and he
So
was
it
there.
was translocated in an instant.
Another Native American apostolic brother, I won't tell you the whole story, but he pulled out of a hotel in Las Vegas, Nevada, out of the parking lot. He turned left onto the main road and pulled into his driveway in Alaska instantly.
Wow. So it's happening sporadically here and there.
It's happening, yeah.
And we want to look at one more example before we close this lesson for the day. Is the prophet Elijah. In 1 Kings chapter 18, verses 11 to 12, we read that the prophet Elijah had a constant experience of being translocated from one place to another place. And it seems that everybody there knows this.
Yes.
Even after he was taken up, in 2 Kings chapter 2, verse 16, we read where the sons of the prophet told Elisha, let us go and look for your master. Perhaps the Spirit of the Lord has taken him up and cast him on some mountain or into some valley. So the ability for the prophet Elijah to translocate it by faith at will was a very common knowledge among everybody in his time.
Right.
So that is an absolute proof that it can be done today.
Yeah, there's many other scriptures, but yeah, that's enough to prove it.
Well, and I'm sure there are more such experiences. Maybe any one of you who are watching, perhaps you have experienced something like that. You can write and tell us your experience to the email ID that you see on your screen of your blessings that you receive from the Lord being translocated from one geographical place to another geographical place, like what you have just heard. God bless you all till we meet again next week.